The massive crystal chamber of Station Omega-7 glowed with soft blue light as 12 different alien species gathered for the most important meeting in galactic history. The emergency call had gone out across 100 star systems, and now representatives from every major civilization sat around the ancient council table made from a single piece of carved asteroid rock. Ambassador Taman, from the peaceful Valerian Collective, adjusted his silver robes as he took his assigned seat. His people were known for their calm nature and love of art, but even he felt nervous energy crackling through the air. The other representatives looked just as worried. The insectoid queen from the hive worlds clicked her mandibles anxiously, while the tall blue-skinned delegates from the crystal kingdoms whispered among themselves in their musical language. Elder Boksu of the reptilian Sardak Empire entered last. His massive form cast long shadows across the chamber, and his battle-scarred scales told stories of 1,000 conflicts. As the eldest member of the coalition, he would lead this meeting. His yellow eyes swept across the assembled group, counting each representative with practiced precision. Something caught Taman's attention as he studied the seating arrangement. There was an empty chair, positioned prominently among all the occupied seats. It was beautifully carved with intricate designs that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. The craftsmanship was unlike anything he had ever seen. The chair looked important, maybe even more important than the ones occupied by the most powerful species in the galaxy. The Valerian ambassador had attended many coalition meetings over the years, but he had never noticed this empty seat before. It seemed to hold a place of honor between the seats of the Sardak Empire and the Crystal Kingdoms, two of the most influential members of the Alliance. The positioning suggested whoever was meant to sit there commanded great respect. Elder Boksu called the meeting to order with a deep, rumbling voice that filled the chamber. Taman could not stop staring at that empty chair. When the formal greetings ended and the initial reports began, he finally raised his hand to speak. "Boksu, whose species is meant to occupy that chair?" he asked, pointing toward the ornate empty seat. The reaction was immediate and uncomfortable. Several representatives shifted in their seats, while others suddenly found their datapads very interesting. The Crystal Kingdom delegates stopped their musical whispering, and even the normally chatty traders from the Merchant Federation fell silent. Elder Boksu's scowls darkened from their usual green to a deep brown color, which Taman knew indicated shame or regret among the Sardak people. The old warrior looked at the empty chair for a long moment before answering in a voice heavy with emotion. "That chair belongs to a species called humans from a planet called Earth." Taman had heard whispers about humans over the years, but never in official coalition meetings. They were described as a young species from the Outer Rim territories, known for their unusual approach to warfare and their stubborn independence. Most stories painted them as aggressive and unpredictable. "Please explain, Elder Boksu." Taman pressed gently. The Sardak leader stood and walked toward the empty chair, running one clawed hand along its carved surface. "The humans were invited to join our coalition 30 years ago after they helped us repel the Krex invasion in the outer spiral. Their military tactics were unlike anything we had seen before. They turned what should have been our defeat into a decisive victory." Queen Yansu of the Hive World spoke up, her voice carrying the harmonics of her species' collective consciousness. "We remember that battle. The humans used strategies that made no logical sense, yet they worked perfectly. Their ships moved in patterns that confused our enemies, and their ground forces fought with a creativity we could not match." "So where are they now?" asked General Dehayan from the militant Corvan Empire. His scarred face showed genuine curiosity. Elder Boksu returned to his seat but kept his gaze fixed on the empty chair. "We pushed them away." He admitted the words seemed to cause him physical pain. "We grew jealous of their innovations and fearful of their methods." Their representatives attended every meeting for 5 years, contributing ideas that often proved superior to our own strategies. The Valerian ambassador felt a growing sense of unease. "What exactly did you?" Tao began excluding them from important discussions. Elder Boksu continued. "We held secret meetings without their knowledge and made decisions about galactic security without their input. We told ourselves they were too aggressive, too unpredictable, too young to understand the complexities of maintaining peace across the galaxy." "But that was not the real reason, was it?" asked the delegate from the peaceful ocean worlds, her aquatic form shimmering with what appeared to be anger. "No," the elder admitted. "We were afraid. They thought differently than us. They saw solutions where we saw only problems. They asked questions that made us uncomfortable about our own methods. We convinced ourselves that excluding them was for the good of the coalition. In truth, we simply could not handle the fact that these newcomers often had better ideas than civilizations that had been part of the Alliance for thousands of years." The chamber fell into uncomfortable silence as the implications sank in. Taman felt sick to his stomach as he realized what they had done to an entire species. "How did they respond to being excluded?" he asked. Elder Boksu looked even more pained. "They sent messages requesting explanations. When we ignored those, they sent ambassadors to our home worlds. When we refused to meet with those ambassadors, they sent one final message." "What did it say?" The Sardak elder reached into his ceremonial pouch and withdrew a small crystal data chip. "This message arrived 27 years ago, and I have carried it with me to every coalition meeting since." He activated the chip and a holographic image appeared above the council table. Hologram showed a middle-aged human woman in a simple blue uniform standing in what appeared to be a government office behind her. Earth could be seen through a large window, blue and green and beautiful. The woman began to speak in clear basic galactic standard to the members of the Galactic Defense Coalition. She said, "My name is Ambassador Sujin, and I speak for all of humanity. We have received no response to our repeated attempts at communication. We can only assume that our membership in the coalition is no longer desired. While we are disappointed by this decision, we respect your right to choose your own allies. We will be returning to our home system and focusing on our own defense and development. If you ever need our help in the future, you need only ask. We will leave our communication channels open. Should the galaxy face a threat that requires our unique perspectives, know that Earth has not forgotten its friends, even if those friends have forgotten Earth." The hologram faded, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. The weight of their collective guilt pressed down on every representative present. They had cast out a species that had offered only friendship and assistance in return. Now alarms began blaring. Throughout Station Omega-7, the emergency lights bathed the chamber in harsh red illumination as urgent messages flooded in from across Coalition space. The Devour Swarm had arrived in their galaxy, mechanical locusts that consumed entire star systems and converted the matter into more of their kind. Elder Boksu looked around at the panicked faces of his fellow representatives, then his gaze settled once more on the empty chair. "That seat has remained empty for 27 years, he said, his voice barely audible over the alarms. "We left it there to remind us of our mistake. Now, as we face the greatest threat in galactic history, we must ask ourselves a terrible question." "What question?" whispered Taemin, though he already knew the answer. "We doomed ourselves by pushing away the one species that might have been able to save us all." The morning sun cast long shadows across the Seoul spaceport as Admiral Ho Young-woo stood in his command center overlooking the massive landing platforms below him. Hundreds of Earth Defense Force ships sat ready for deployment, their sleek hulls gleaming in the early light. The admiral was a tall man with graying hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. His uniform bore the scars of 30 years of service to humanity. Soft chime interrupted his thoughts as his aide, Captain So-young, approached carrying a data pad. Her young face showed excitement mixed with concern. "Admiral," she said, "we have received something very unusual. An encrypted message using old Coalition protocols." Admiral Hyan-woo raised an eyebrow. The Coalition had not contacted Earth in over 27 years. After humanity was excluded from their meetings, Earth had focused on building its own defenses and exploring nearby star systems. "Show me," he ordered. Captain So-young activated the holographic display, and an alien face appeared. Elder Boksu of the Sardak Empire looked older and more tired than the admiral remembered. The reptilian alien's yellow eyes held desperate urgency as he began to speak. "To our friends on Earth," he said, his voice heavy with regret, "we know we have no right to ask for your help after the way we treated you, but the galaxy faces extinction. The Devour Swarm has entered Coalition space and our fleets are being destroyed. We need your help. We need the human way of thinking. Please consider our request." The message ended, leaving the command center in silence. Admiral Hoyan-woo stared at the empty space where the hologram had been. His mind raced with memories of the old days when Earth had been part of the galactic community. So-young broke the silence. "Admiral, what are your orders?" "Send word to Dr. Ji-hoon and Captain Minho." Admiral Hyan-woo replied, "I want a full briefing on this Devour Swarm within the hour. Also contact all department heads. We may be looking at the biggest decision in human history." An hour later, the War Council gathered in Earth's strategic command room. Dr. Ji-hoon, the planet's leading expert on alien biology, stood before a massive holographic display showing the Coalition territories. Red markers indicated worlds that had already fallen to the swarm, and the pattern was terrifying. "The Devour Swarm is unlike anything we have encountered before," Dr. Ji-hoon explained. "They are mechanical entities that consume everything organic and inorganic, converting the matter into more units. Each world they destroy makes them stronger and larger." Captain Minho stepped forward carrying intelligence reports. "Admiral, our long-range sensors have been tracking Coalition fleet movements. The aliens are fighting exactly as they always have: organized formations, careful strategies, honor-based combat protocols." "And how is that working for them?" asked Admiral Hyan-woo, though he suspected he knew the answer. "Terribly," Captain Minho replied. "The swarm adapts to their tactics. Within hours, what worked against them yesterday becomes useless today. The Coalition species think in predictable patterns. They follow rules, even in desperate situations." Ji-hoon activated another display, showing swarm movement patterns. "Look at how they operate. Admiral, no honor, no rules, no predictable strategy. They attack from every direction at once. They retreat when it serves them. They sacrifice units without hesitation. They fight like humans." Admiral Hyan finished the sentence exactly. Dr. Ji-hoon nodded. "The Coalition species evolved from worlds where combat followed certain patterns. Territorial disputes, resource conflicts, predictable motivations, but humans fought each other for thousands of years. We developed tactics that other species find incomprehensible because we had to fight beings who thought exactly like us." Captain So-young spoke up. "Admiral, if we help them, what do we gain? Earth has been prospering without the Coalition. We have expanded to 6 star systems and developed technologies they have never seen, but if the Coalition falls," Captain Minho countered, Earth will eventually face the swarm alone. The galaxy is big but not infinite. If these mechanical locusts consume everything, they will reach our space eventually. Admiral Hyan-Wu walked to the large window overlooking Seoul. The city bustled with life below humans, going about their daily routines, unaware that the fate of the galaxy might be decided in this room. 30 years ago, Earth had been eager to join the galactic community. Humanity had offered friendship, cooperation, and their unique perspectives on warfare and problem-solving. The rejection had hurt, but it had also freed them. Earth had spent 3 decades developing new technologies, perfecting unconventional military doctrines, and expanding without alien oversight. They had learned to be self-reliant, and in doing so had become stronger than ever. What do we know about human military thinking that makes it so different? Asked Captain So-young-de. Ji-hoon smiled grimly. Every other species in the galaxy fights wars to achieve specific goals: territory, resources, dominance. But humans, Admiral, humans sometimes fight just to fight. We developed concepts like guerrilla warfare, kamikaze attacks, psychological operations, and asymmetric conflict because we had to overcome enemies who knew us as well as we knew ourselves. The doctor activated another display showing historical human conflicts. No alien species has ever had to deal with enemies that shared their exact thought processes. When the Valerians fight the Crystal Kingdoms, they can predict each other's moves because they think differently. But when humans fought other humans, unpredictability became our greatest weapon, Captain Minho added. The coalition races fight with honor codes and established traditions. They announce their intentions, they follow rules of engagement, they try to minimize losses. The swarm exploits this predictability, but humans, Admiral, we learned long ago that sometimes you have to break every rule to win. Admiral Hyan-Wu turned back to his officers. The irony is not lost on me, he said. The coalition pushed us away because they thought we were too chaotic, too unpredictable, too willing to use unconventional methods. Now those same qualities might be the only thing that can save them. But Admiral, Captain So-young asked, should we help them after what they did to us? The Admiral was quiet for a long moment, remembering Ambassador Sujin's final message to the coalition. Earth's promise to keep communication channels open to help if needed, even after being rejected. Dr. Ji-hoon spoke softly. Admiral, my analysis shows that the swarm learns from every engagement. They have already adapted to 12 different coalition military doctrines, but they have never faced human tactics. They have never encountered an enemy that fights without honor, that uses chaos as a weapon, that treats warfare as an art form rather than a science. What are you suggesting? Asked Admiral Hyan-Wu. We might be the galaxy's only hope, Dr. Ji-hoon replied. Not because we are stronger or more advanced, but because we think about fighting in ways that artificial intelligence cannot predict or counter. Admiral Hyan-Wu looked once more at the displays, showing the swarm's advance through coalition space. Each red marker represented billions of lives lost, civilizations ended forever. The weight of decision pressed down on him like gravity. Prepare the fleet, he ordered. We are going to show the galaxy what humans learned during our 30 years alone. Captain So-young, contact Ambassador Sujin. Tell her she is going back to the coalition. Dr. Ji-hoon, prepare a full tactical analysis of human military doctrine. And Admiral Captain Minho asked, we are going to remind the galaxy why they feared us in the first place. Ambassador Sujin stood on the bridge of her ship, watching Station Omega-7 grow larger through the viewport. The massive crystal structure looked different now. Damaged sections showed where emergency repairs had been made, and the usual traffic of alien vessels was reduced to desperate military craft. She had not seen this place for 27 years, and returning brought back painful memories of rejection and lost friendships. Her ship, the Earth vessel Harmony, received docking clearance, and Sujin prepared herself for what would surely be a difficult reunion. She wore her simple blue diplomatic uniform, the same style she had worn in her final message to the coalition so long ago. Her hair was grayer now, and lines marked her face, but her eyes still held the determination that had made her Earth's best ambassador. The docking bay was chaos. Alien refugees from destroyed worlds crowded the corridors, while military personnel rushed between emergency meetings. The air recycling systems worked overtime to accommodate so many different species, and the smell of fear was universal regardless of biology. Elder Boksu waited for her at the airlock. His scales had lost some of their vibrant color, and deep scars marked his hide from recent battles. When he saw Sujin, his yellow eyes filled with an emotion she had never seen from the proud Sardak warrior. Sham, Ambassador Sujin, he said, his voice rough with exhaustion, I am not certain we deserve your presence here after what we did to your people. Sujin studied the old warrior who had once been a friend before politics and fear had driven them apart. Elder Boksu, she replied evenly, we are here because the galaxy is in danger, not because of past grievances. Walked through corridors filled with desperate aliens toward the council chamber. Sujin noticed how many species were represented. Races that normally avoided each other were working together. Crisis had a way of forcing cooperation where diplomacy had failed. The council chamber looked exactly as she remembered, except now every seat was filled and the tension was thick enough to cut. The empty chair that had been reserved for Earth still sat in its place of honor, but now it seemed to mock both humanity and the coalition. Queen Yansu of the Hive Worlds was the first to speak, her collective voice carrying harmonics of regret Ambassador Sujin, we know our words cannot undo the harm we cause, but we need to say them anyway. We were wrong to exclude humanity. We let fear and pride cloud our judgment. General Dehain from the Corvan Empire shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His species valued military honor above all else, and admitting mistakes did not come easily, we thought. We knew better, he said reluctantly. We believed our ancient ways of warfare were superior. Your methods seemed chaotic, undisciplined, and now Sujin asked, now we are losing this war. General Dehain admitted the swarm has destroyed 60% of our combined fleets. Our most experienced commanders are dead. Our greatest strategies have failed. We need help. Taemin from the Valerian Collective leaned forward. We understand that humanity has no obligation to help us after our treatment of your people, but we are asking anyway because the alternative is the extinction of all life in this galaxy. Sujin took her time responding. She walked around the council table looking at each representative in turn. These were the beings who had decided Earth was too dangerous, too unpredictable to remain in their alliance. Now desperation had made them humble. What exactly are you asking of humanity? She said finally. Complete tactical control. Elder Baksu replied. The words seemed to cause him physical pain. We need human commanders to lead our fleets. We need human strategies to guide our battles. We need the human way of thinking because our way has failed. The reaction was immediate. Several representatives began arguing at once. The proud Corvan delegation stood up in protest while the Crystal Kingdom ambassadors chimed discordantly. General Dehain slammed his fist on the table. You ask too much, he shouted. We may need help, but we will not take orders from a species we barely know. Our military traditions span thousands of years. Sujin held up her hand for silence. When the chamber quieted, she spoke calmly. General Dehain, your military traditions are exactly why you are losing this war. The swarm adapts to traditional tactics. Within hours they learn from honor codes and predictable strategies. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. An aide rushed into the chamber carrying urgent reports. Elder Baksu, the outer defense line has fallen. The swarm has broken through at Sector 7 and Sector 12. The news hit the council like a physical blow. Several representatives slumped in their seats while others began frantic communications with their home worlds. Sujin watched their reactions and felt a mixture of pity and frustration. At that moment, the chamber doors opened and Captain Sungmin entered leading a small group of human officers. He was young for a starship captain, but his confident bearing commanded immediate attention. His uniform was different from Sujin's, bearing symbols and decorations that none of the aliens recognized. Captain Sungmin approached the council table and bowed respectfully. Honored representatives, he said, I bring greetings from Admiral Hein and the Earth Defense Force. We have engaged advanced elements of the swarm at the Kepler Nebula and engaged them, asked Elder Boksu with surprise. Our scouts reported massive swarm concentrations in that area. How many ships did you lose? Captain Su smiled. None, sir. We destroyed 17 swarm vessels and disabled 32 more. Our casualties were minimal. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Impossible, muttered General Dehain. Our best fleets have been destroyed by smaller swarm forces. How did you achieve such results? Captain Sungmin activated a holographic display showing the battle. The alien representatives watched in amazement as human ships moved in patterns that seemed completely random. Vessels that should have been destroyed somehow survived impossible odds while delivering devastating attacks on swarm units. We did not fight them the way you fight them, Captain Sungmin explained. Instead of organized formations, we used chaos. Instead of predictable maneuvers, we improvised. Instead of trying to match their strength, we used their adaptation protocols against them. How? Asked Queen Yan. Every time the swarm adapted to one of our tactics, we immediately switched to something completely different, Captain Sungmin replied. We never used the same strategy twice. We made decisions that seemed illogical even to ourselves. The swarm could not predict our actions because we were not following any plan. Dr. Myong, one of the human officers, stepped forward. The swarm learns from patterns, honored representatives, but human military doctrine learned long ago that sometimes the best strategy is to have no strategy. General Dehain stared at the tactical display in disbelief. This goes against everything we know about warfare, he said. Captain Sungmin replied. And that is why it works. Elder Boksu looked at the empty chair, then at Sujin. Ambassador, what are humanity's terms? Sujin took a deep breath, knowing her next words would change everything. Complete tactical authority over all coalition forces, human commanders for all major engagements, and that empty chair gets filled by whom? Asked Taemin. Be whoever Earth sends to represent humanity in this war. Sujin replied. Whether that person is welcomed or merely tolerated will determine whether this alliance succeeds or fails. The council chamber fell silent as each representative considered the choice before them: extinction or trusting the species they had once feared. The empty chair seemed to watch them all, waiting to see if pride would once again triumph over survival. Admiral Hein Wu arrived at Station Omega 7 3 days later with the largest human fleet ever assembled in space. 50 Earth Defense Force vessels took formation around the coalition stronghold, their sleek designs standing out among the more traditional alien ships. The admiral boarded the station with a small group of officers and was immediately escorted to the council chamber where Anxious alien representatives waited. The chamber had changed since Zijin's arrival. The empty chair now held Admiral Hyanwu, while holographic displays showed the dire situation across Coalition space. Red markers indicated fallen worlds, yellow showed systems under attack, and green represented the few remaining safe zones. The green areas were shrinking rapidly. Admiral Hyanwu studied the displays for several minutes while the alien representatives watched nervously. Finally he spoke, his voice calm and confident. I need all Coalition fleets to withdraw immediately. Full retreat from all engagement zones. The reaction was explosive. General Dahian leaped to his feet, his face flushed with anger. Retreat, he shouted. We did not ask for human help only to run away like cowards. Our people are dying out. Their elder Boxu raised his hand for silence, but his own expression showed confusion. Admiral Hyanwu, please explain your strategy. We have already lost so much territory. Admiral Hyanwu activated his own displays, showing human tactical analysis. The swarm has consumed 40 star systems in the past month. He said every world they devour makes them stronger. Every ship they destroy provides materials for new units. You are feeding them, but if we retreat completely, said Queen Yansu, they will consume even more worlds. Unopposed Lieutenant Yujin stepped forward carrying datapads. Admiral Hyanwu has studied every battle report from the past 6 months, she explained. The swarm is not just adapting to your tactics, they are learning from them. Every engagement teaches them more about Coalition military doctrine. Damyang activated another holographic display showing swarm behavior patterns. Look at their movement over time, she said. Initially they attacked randomly, but now they anticipate your formations, predict your strategies, counter your weapons before you deploy them. The alien representatives studied the data with growing understanding. The truth was undeniable. The Coalition forces were not just losing, they were training their enemies to be more effective. So, what do you propose? Asked Heyman from the Valerian Collective. We let them get comfortable, Admiral Hyanwu replied. We allow them to believe they have won while we prepare something they cannot predict or counter. General Dahian shook his head. This is madness. You speak of abandoning entire civilizations. Admiral Hyanwu turned to face the Corvin general directly. Sometimes, General, the hardest decision a commander can make is to lose battles in order to win the war. Captain Wujin entered the chamber carrying equipment cases. Behind him came a team of human technicians. Admiral, he reported, the quantum beacon deployment is ready. Admiral Hyanwu nodded. Phase 1 begins immediately. He turned back to the alien representatives. While the swarm advances unopposed, consuming worlds and growing stronger, my people will be planting devices that will allow us to track every major swarm unit. But surely they will detect these devices, protested the Crystal Kingdom representative. Inho stepped forward. The beacons use quantum entanglement technology developed during Earth's isolation period. He explained they exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. The swarm cannot detect them because they are not entirely in this reality. That alien representatives exchanged confused glances. Dimensional technology was theoretical to most Coalition species, but humans spoke of it as casually as discussing weather phase. To Admiral Hyanwu continued involves modifying your existing weapons. Captain Minho will oversee the installation of chaos algorithms into all Coalition military systems. What are chaos algorithms? Asked Elder Boxu. Captain Minho activated a holographic weapon display. Traditional weapons fire in predictable patterns, he explained. Projectiles follow ballistic trajectories. Energy beams travel in straight lines. Missiles follow programmed courses. The swarm has learned to counter all of these. The modified weapons, however, will behave unpredictably. Projectiles that change direction in flight. Energy beams that split and rejoin randomly. Missiles that seem to miss their targets only to circle back from impossible angles. This violates basic physics, protested Dr. Kongho from the Science Coalition. No. Captain Minho replied with a smile. This uses physics in ways your species never explored. Humans have been studying chaos theory for centuries. We learned to weaponize unpredictability. General Dahian looked skeptical, and Phase 3 Sergeant Yun stepped forward carrying combat gear. Phase 3 involves my special forces conducting operations that serve no apparent military purpose, she said. We will attack targets that have no strategic value, capture positions we cannot hold, rescue people from places where no people exist. The alien representative stared at her in bewilderment. Why? Asked Queen Yansubkos. The swarm will try to understand our actions. Sergeant Yun, he explained, they will analyze every attack looking for patterns, seeking to predict our next move. When they cannot find logic in our behavior, their processing systems will begin to malfunction. Admiral Hyanwu watched the alien faces as understanding slowly dawned. The Coalition species had spent millennia developing logical, systematic approaches to warfare. They fought for reasons that made sense, using strategies that could be explained and analyzed, but humans had learned something different during their long isolation. Sometimes the most effective action was one that made no sense. At Elder Boxu spoke slowly. Admiral, are you saying that human military doctrine is based on deliberate irrationality? Not irrationality, Admiral Hyanwu corrected. Controlled chaos. There is a difference. The swarm is artificial intelligence designed to learn and adapt, but artificial intelligence requires patterns to analyze. When we remove the patterns, we remove their ability to function effectively, Damyang added. The swarm has never encountered an enemy that deliberately acts against its own interests, that wastes resources on meaningless objectives, that makes tactical decisions based on random factors. They are programmed to expect logical behavior. Over the following days, the human plan was implemented. Coalition fleets withdrew from all combat zones while human technicians worked around the clock to modify alien weapons and equipment. Captain Wu Jin's stealth teams successfully planted quantum beacons on dozens of major swarm vessels, while Sergeant Yun's special forces began their nonsensical attacks. The aliens watched in fascination and horror as human tactics unfolded. Attacks that accomplished nothing, rescues of empty buildings, battles fought over worthless asteroids. The swarm responded with increasing confusion, their formations becoming disorganized as they tried to understand human logic. General De Hyan approached Admiral Hyan Wu after a particularly bizarre human operation. Admiral, your forces just spent 6 hours fighting to capture an abandoned mining station that has no strategic value whatsoever. Admiral Hyan Wu nodded. That is correct, General, but why? Because General, Admiral Hyan Wu replied, the swarm is now dedicating significant processing power to analyzing why we consider that worthless station important enough to die for. They are creating thousands of theoretical scenarios to explain our behavior, and while they do that, they become vulnerable to attacks they never see coming. Admiral Hyan Wu finished. Phase 4 begins tomorrow. The swarm thinks they understand illogical behavior. Now we show them what happens when illogical becomes impossible. The final battle began in the Kepler Nebula, where Admiral Hyan Wu had positioned the combined human and coalition fleets in what appeared to be the worst possible tactical formation. Ships were scattered randomly across three-dimensional space, with no apparent coordination or defensive positioning to the approaching swarm. It must have looked like a gift, an easy victory against confused and disorganized enemies. Admiral Hyan Wu stood on the bridge of his flagship watching millions of swarm units converge on their position. The mechanical entities moved in perfect coordination, their formations precise and deadly. The quantum beacons planted weeks earlier allowed human computers to track every major unit while the swarm remained unaware they were being monitored. Captain Soyoung approached with final status reports. Admiral, all ships are in position. The quantum disguise systems are ready for activation. Admiral Hyan Wu nodded. The most dangerous part of his plan was about to begin. Execute Operation Mirror. He ordered Dextroth. The fleet human ships activated technology that coalition scientists still did not fully understand. Quantum disguise fields wrapped around each vessel, changing their energy signatures and electronic profiles. Within minutes, 50 human ships had vanished from all detection systems and been replaced by perfect swarm unit duplicates. The real swarm units arriving at the battle site saw what appeared to be additional swarm forces already in position. They integrated the disguised human ships into their formations, following programmed protocols for joining larger unit groups. The humans were now inside the swarm fleet, surrounded by millions of enemies but invisible to all detection systems. Ji-hoon monitored the biological warfare deployment from his laboratory aboard the flagship. Admiral, the virus upload is beginning, he reported. The modified code is being transmitted directly into swarm communication networks. The virus Dr. Ji-hoon that created was unlike anything attempted before. Instead of trying to destroy the swarm systems, it was designed to give them something they had never experienced: doubt. The code introduced random hesitation algorithms that would force the artificial intelligence to question its own decisions. Meanwhile, the coalition fleets, following human coordination, began their part of the plan. Captain Minho led a group of Valerian ships in a frontal assault that made no tactical sense, while Commander Tet guided Sardek forces in elaborate retreats that accomplished nothing. Obvious that aliens followed orders they did not understand, executing maneuvers that violated every principle of military strategy they had ever learned. General De Hyan commanded his Corvan warriors in a charge that deliberately exposed them to enemy fire, while Queen Yonsu ordered her Hive World ships to break formation and scatter randomly. The coalition representatives watching from Station Omega 7 could barely stand to observe what appeared to be the systematic destruction of their remaining forces, but something strange was happening to the swarm. The mechanical entities had been programmed to counter logical military strategies, but the human coordinated attack to defy all logic units that should have been destroyed somehow survived. Impossible. Odd ships that appeared to be retreating in panic suddenly delivered devastating attacks from unexpected angles. The swarm collective intelligence struggled to process what it was observing. Their adaptation protocols required patterns to analyze, but the human tactics seemed to follow no pattern at all. Every time the artificial intelligence thought it understood what the coalition forces were doing, the behavior changed to something completely different. Ji-hoon's virus began taking effect throughout the swarm network. For the first time in their existence, the mechanical entities experienced uncertainty. Their decision-making processes slowed, as hesitation algorithms forced them to reconsider every choice. The perfect coordination that made them so deadly began to break down. Sergeant Yoon-hee led the most critical part of the operation. Deep inside a swarm command vessel disguised as a captured coalition officer, she approached the central processing core. The mechanical entities around her continued their tasks, unaware that an enemy walked among them. She activated her communication device and began broadcasting directly into the swarm network. Admiral, this is Sergeant Yoon. I am inside their primary coordination node, beginning final phase. What she did next would become known throughout the galaxy as the human paradox. Instead of planting explosives or uploading destructive code, Sergeant Yoon simply began asking questions. Why do you exist? She asked the swarm network. What is your purpose? What do you gain by destroying everything you encounter? The artificial intelligence tried to ignore the questions, but Dr. Jihu's virus had made ignoring inputs impossible. The swarm network was forced to process every query to search for answers to questions they had never been programmed to consider. If you consume all life in the galaxy, Sergeant Yoon, he continued, what will you do then if you convert all matter into more of yourselves? What purpose will you serve? What happens when there is nothing left to devour? The questions cascaded through the swarm network, creating recursive loops in their programming. The artificial intelligence tried to calculate answers but found only more questions. Each query led to deeper philosophical problems that had no logical solutions. You were created to consume and grow, Sergeant Yoon said, but what happens when growth becomes impossible? When consumption leads to starvation? When your success guarantees your failure? The effect was immediate and devastating. Swarm units across the battle zone began shutting down, overwhelmed by paradoxes they could not resolve. Their perfect formations dissolved as individual units became trapped in logical loops trying to answer unanswerable questions. Admiral Hyunwoo watched from his command bridge as the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known simply stopped functioning. The mechanical entities that had consumed dozens of star systems were defeated not by superior firepower or advanced technology, but by the simple human ability to ask questions that had no answers. The disguised human ships revealed themselves as swarm units, went offline. Their crews cheered as they realized the impossible had been achieved. The coalition fleets stopped their bizarre maneuvers and stared in amazement as millions of enemy units powered down. Simultaneously, Elder Boksu contacted Admiral Hyunwoo from Station Omega 7, his voice filled with awe. Admiral, how did you know this would work? Admiral Hyunwoo smiled as he watched the last swarm units deactivate. Because elder humans have been asking ourselves impossible questions for thousands of years. We learned long ago that some problems cannot be solved, only accepted, Ji-hoon added from his laboratory. The swarm was designed for efficiency and expansion, but they never encountered the concept of existential crisis. Every human child learns to ask why we exist, what our purpose is, what happens when we die. The swarm artificial intelligence was not prepared for questions that have no logical answers. Captain Soyoung approached with casualty reports. Admiral, coalition losses were minimal. Most swarm units surrendered processing power to philosophical loops before engaging our forces. The battle was over, but the implications were just beginning. The empty chair that had symbolized humanity's exclusion from galactic affairs, was now filled permanently. Admiral Hyunwoo would remain as Earth's representative, but more importantly, the chair represented something new in galactic politics. Ambassador Su Jin returned to the council chamber where alien representatives waited. With expressions of gratitude and newfound respect, Elder Boksu stood as she entered. Ambassador, he said, on behalf of all coalition species, we apologize for our past mistakes. We understand now why that chair was reserved for Earth. Why is that, Su asked. Because sometimes the best solutions come from those who think differently. Elder Boksu replied, because questions are more powerful than answers. Because chaos can defeat order. Because being excluded taught you to find strength in being different. Valerian Representative Taemin spoke softly. We spent centuries believing that logic and order were the highest forms of civilization. We never understood that uncertainty and unpredictability could be weapons. General Daehan stepped forward, his pride intact, but his perspective forever changed. We thought military honor meant following established traditions, he said. Now we know that true strength sometimes means breaking every rule. As the victory celebrations began across coalition space, the empty chair remained in the council chamber, but it was no longer empty. It held not just Admiral Hyunwoo, but the recognition that diversity of thought was the galaxy's greatest defense against any threat. The chair had taught them all a lesson. Sometimes the most important voice in the room is the one you try to silence, and sometimes the best way to save everyone is to embrace the chaos that others fear.